We have things, we have sound, we have
Yeah,
screens, we have all the things. This is awesome. Good morning, everybody. I'm so honored to be here. My name is Dr. Roncoroni. I am an associate professor at the University of Denver here, and I am also the founder and director of an initiative social enterprise called Cocina Libre that we'll tell you more about this morning. I wanted to begin by doing a land acknowledgement, both because I think it's important that we reflect always when we're learning and we're sharing space of where we are sharing space, but also because the work that we do at Cocina is connected to land and displacement and survival. And so I think it's critical that we reflect this way. So we begin by acknowledging that we are on the traditional lands of Cheyenne, Arapaho, in this region that we now know as Denver was a site of trade, gathering, and community for indigenous communities before colonization. We honor the indigenous ancestors of this land, past and present, and recognize the ongoing struggle and the ongoing resilience that these communities have shown here in Colorado and also across the nation. As we reflect on the stories of displacement and survival and resistance, I'm hoping that we can remember that we are on lands that were originally occupied by communities that have faced invisibility and erasure, and that we continue to treat this land with respect and protect it and publicly. I also hope that we can treat this space as a communal space for gathering. I know that can be sometimes hard when you have someone on stage kind of preaching at you. I also know that, at least for me as a rising scholar, some of these presentations can elicit shame sometimes, right? Because you're like, oh, I wish I were doing that, or I wish I knew that, or and you don't have to, right? I think the key in this space is that we treat it as the kitchen table, right? We get together, we figure things out, we think about how we want to do things the same or differently, or and so it's kind of bringing our openness and our receptiveness to this space and bring this intent for community and not for extraction, especially when we hear the chef's stories. Our work is anchored in community-based participatory research. You will never hear us use the word subjects when we think of the chefs that we work with. Our chefs are actually community members. We have chefs who are trained chefs, and then we also have community members who cook out of the kitchen. La señora selling arepas, right? And for us, everybody's a chef. The other part of that is we don't decide what the project will look like until we meet with our community participants and they will tell us, right? As an example, when we started, we're ready to launch book 2 now. And for this book 2, I had this brilliant idea. Why don't we, I say brilliant idea, we record the interviews of the university so that we can have a record. And then they can bring the dishes here. The light was so good at the studio. It was brilliant, according to me, right? They bring the dishes and we take the photos at the studio. We meet with Chef Juan, we talk with Chef Juan, and Chef Juan says, I'm not bringing my food to your university where it's going to look all soggy and crappy so that you can take pictures. You know, you're going to go to my restaurant. Oh, good one, right? So we had to rewrite our IRB protocol and say, this is what we're doing instead, right? And, but for me, that matters, right? The community that we work in is a, you know, an active stakeholder in the work that we're doing. We also anchor our work in liberation psychology framing. So we begin grounded in liberation psych. We begin with centering the experience of community members like undocumented immigrants who have been marginalized, who consistently are not heard or treated with respect, and ask them, you know, how do we use your story, your experience, the wisdom, the skill that you bring, not just to survive, but also to live in a different way, right? To heal, to reclaim, to resist, right? For me, Cocina is not just a book, it's not just a documentary, it's not just a project, it's a response by immigrants for immigrants, right? A response to invisibility, a response to criminalization, and to systems that really weren't built for immigrants, right? And that we have to resist in every day. Cocina Libre exists to amplify immigrant voices through food, through story, and through community. Our mission is rooted in the principles of liberation psychology. So we work with and not on immigrant communities. We center dignity, we center healing and collective empowerment. And we ask, what does freedom look like? What would it look like if we actually could be who we are in the space where we now live, right? What stories deserve to be told at the table? And we use food as an entry point into these truths, right? About immigration, about survival, about grief, about joy, right? There's so much joy that immigrants bring, and so often that gets left out of the rhetoric when we talk about immigrants. And so for us, the structure of Cocina reflects those values in that we reinvest all of the profits. For example, we have, for those of you in the room, we have books in the back of the room, and the profit from those book sales, any donations that we get, and any money that we get after we pay for our chef's time and food, Cocina Libre gets then re-spent into them getting their licenses and getting trained in the food industry so that they can become more financially empowered. We co-create every story, every event. So I had conversations with both of the chefs in the room saying, do you want to be recorded? Do you want to be here for starters? But then do you want to be recorded? What pieces are you comfortable telling? If you want to tell your own background story, what are pieces that you're okay sharing, and what are pieces that are yours and you don't have to share in the room? So whether it's a dinner, a cooking class, a presentation, every space that we create, we try to create from a place of respect, right, and center in that dignity. We work with education because it's our passion and it's our lived experience. I'm an immigrant from Argentina. I'm a licensed psychologist, and I'm also a tenured associate professor at TU. My partner, husband also, is Dr. Figueroa. He is a music anthropologist. He's Puerto Rican, and he spent his career looking at identity building for specifically Puerto Ricans in the diaspora. So together we know well what it means to be an immigrant in the US. We don't speak for immigrants, right? We have our own immigrant experience, but we know the triumphs and the challenges of being. For us, the turning point for Cocina was realizing that a lot of the stories that we share as immigrants were told at the table, right? When we sit down. For me, it was really, I'll say for me, when Cocina Libre kind of started growing and started getting recognition, it was really confusing. So I'm like, what is interesting for you about this? Because this is what we do. We sit at the table, we cook, we share our recipes often, and then we talk about our experiences. And so but also recognizing that this is not how we speak about immigration when we're outside of those immigrant rooms, and how do we extend that? And so that aha moment of combining food and personal narratives is what led to the creation of Cocina Libre. We also, we also work with grad and undergrad students at the University of Denver. They do everything from coordinating events to filming documentary to setting up the studio so that we can record the podcast, research writing, research presentations, etc. I want us to take 2 minutes here for breaking the ice and think of what is a food memory that holds meaning for you. And this doesn't have to be an exotic food memory, right? It doesn't have to be an immigrant food memory. It can be any food. I always share the story of, I have 2 children. I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. And when I was giving birth to my 4-year-old, the restaurant at the cafeteria at the hospital was closing. And so they asked me what I wanted to eat. At this point, I have contractions every 45 seconds. I'm like, nothing. They say, pick something, because when you are done, you're going to be hungry. Find a sandwich. They bring a sandwich. My partner says, do you want your sandwich? I'm like, I can't breathe, no thanks. I'm done giving birth. And I say, now I want my sandwich. He says, I already ate it. Don't ask how I'm still married. I'm not too sure. That's one sandwich that I will always remember, right? And so it doesn't have to be, we all have stories of food, right? Whatever your caregivers made when you were little, if anything, right? What you made when something special happened in your life. So let's take, it's 9:16 here in Denver at least. Let's take 2 minutes and think of what is one food that holds special meaning. Let's do 30 more seconds. I'm gonna run, for those listening, I'm gonna run to the back of the room and get a book. So share some chef's experience. Any volunteers in the room willing to share one food that holds meaning for you? My grandma's mac and cheese. So your grandma's mac and cheese, what was special about grandma's mac and cheese? Yeah. Yeah. Products. And so yeah, that's right. Finally, figured it out, and it's millions of butter. It's like tons of butter. All the good stuff. Yeah. So I'm not sure that on Zoom you can hear the response from the room, but it was grandma's mac and cheese. It was the best in the world. And since grandma passed, they've been trying to figure out as a family how to recreate that. And the way to go was put loads and loads of butter. Have you watched the movie Nonas on Netflix? No. You should. It's exactly that, right? It's recreating. But food is emotion, right? Yes. Food is family. It's something, because there's something else. Yes, you can add the butter, but there's something there too that hits home in a very different. And you can eat mac and cheese anywhere in the world. And some people will tell you this restaurant has the best mac and cheese, and it's still not grandma's, right? There's something there that's missing. Anybody else willing to share from with us?
Angel food cake with boiled frosting.
Okay.
My mother would make it every year for my birthday.
Angel food cake with boiled. What does that look like? Because I don't think we have that in my country.
Well, angel food cake is tall.
Yeah, that
You probably know. And boiled frosting. It's thick and sweet.
Okay.
I'm sure how it's to describe it, but
Almost like a glaze.
it is kind of.
Yeah.
But it's thicker.
And you said your mother made it?
Well, she would ask, what kind of cake. Always she was the same thing.
Yeah. So that's it, right? Milestones in our lives, right? And you try angel cake now and it takes you back. And it's probably never going to be the same angel cake, right? Even, and I've had people say, for example, casserole, right? And you say, what was, because we don't have Thanksgiving in my country, I asked what was special about that casserole. Nothing really if I sell it to you, but there's something about it that reminds me of my parents, or reminds me of my grandma that makes some of my sense.
Can I show one from Zoom? Also?
Absolutely.
So one person on Zoom, Shoshana, shared that in the Jewish Passover experience, we talk about how lamb was used as part of the difficult nights of Passover. My father would always make lamb for the big feast. We were the only family I know who did this. It still feels special. Thank you for sharing that, Shoshana.
Thank you so much for sharing. So food speaks, right? Food is never just about the casserole or the angel. I mean, if I said, you know what, I found angel cake acting super soon. I mean, sure, but no, but yes, okay, but no, right? It's just not the same thing. Or mac and cheese. I know the best restaurant in town. They have, sure or not, they have the best mac and cheese all around. We were just talking. It's not gonna be grandma's. Sorry, I don't know how to, right? And so there's something about food that conveys identity. It's who I am. Remember, we had a harina pan crisis, right? When the influx of Venezuelans showed up at the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. And it wasn't because Venezuelans couldn't eat anything else, but it was because there was something about that food that felt home, that felt like who they were. And there was a need to recreate, right? I've had many community members say, they gave me good food at the shelter that I was able to get, but it just wasn't the food that speaks to me. It's not who I am, right? Food is history, right? Food traces our migration map. I can say, right, when I moved to the United States, I lived in San Diego, lived in Florida. I still eat some food that they ate in the South in Denver, right? Or have some expressions that I picked up, right? Because it travels with us, right? Or from Argentina, my oldest today is turning 10. And what food do you want? Empanadas. We have empanadas in all of Latin America, or mostly. I mean, she doesn't want any empanadas. She wants my mom's empanadas from Argentina, right? And I said, do you want me to make them? No, right? Because they're not my mom's. There's something about that that speaks to the travel, the journey, the migration map to some extent. food is also emotion, right? Food is a portal that speaks to grief, it speaks to joy, it speaks to memories of all sorts. It reconnects us to the ones we love the most. I'll say one of the holidays that I had to, gratefully, I can most years go home for Christmas, which for me and my family is an important holiday, right? But in some years I've not been able to do that because of documentation reasons and when I was not, my way of resisting this was saying, I'm making my mom's, and they didn't look like my mom's, but for me, they were the closest thing to my mom and right? And when you think about it from a liberation psychology perspective, right? If you think of Ignacio Martin Baró as a thought founder of liberation psychology, he emphasized reclaiming historical memory, right? And that's what we can do through food, centering collective experience, right? It's not the same if I tell you, how would you feel if I said, I'm going to have a party at my house on Friday and it's going to be so good. We're going to have water and lettuce and tomato and unseasoned chicken. What would you say?
I'm busy.
I'm busy, right? It's good food. I just give you the protein. I give you the drink that your body needed. Why not? We're going to celebrate my birthday on Saturday. What do you think we should eat? What are things that you would eat at a birthday party? Cake and ice cream, right? And so food is socialized. It's absolutely socialized. It's not just the ingredients. It's not just the food. It's something else that happens when we eat as an individual and as a collective. And so they're centering that collective experience and that cultural identity, right? For different groups. Some groups will say, hey, do you want to get together on Sunday? We'll do carnitas. Some groups, if I say carnitas, they'll look at me like, boy, is it what? Right? Because there's culture there too. And then confronting and transforming some of the psychological effects of oppression, right? There's a way of saying, no, I'm here and this is what I'm eating, right? Because this is who I am. So this is how I'm going to share with the world. And this is how I'm going to take in the world, including that internalized inferiority, right? The silence that we experience. Food is a way to resist all those things. And so Martin Baró spoke to the importance of recovering truths in people's history and people's identity. Especially again for histories that have been, made invisible, that have been denied and continue to be so often. Right? Case context El Salvador, right, and their military dictatorship. This included, people who were not able to participate fully in society, right? And so how do we, speaking, I'm not going to make any political comments, but I do think that we have marginalized community members who are going through a lot of that right now, right? So how do we document these stories, one, so that they're not erased, but also so that we can learn from them in the future, right? And that we can heal from. And so in this way, food becomes a site of right there, right? Of healing, of reclaiming. In May 2024, we launched our two initial and kind of major projects. One was a book, that's the one that's in the room, and the other one was a documentary. In just under a year, I was telling Mel before we started, I put it out in the world. So what we do as immigrants is we show up, we eat, we chat. And so I documented that people were cooking in our house. This was not I have an idea for a long-term eating thing, right? We just documented that and we put it out in the world. We've sold over 800 copies, right? That's 4 times what a self-published book, and we're self-published. What a self-published book will typically sell that usually ranges around 200 copies in a lifetime, right? And this is for us in a year. We also reached #1 new release on Amazon. I don't think tenure committees or university admins often care about these markers, right? Like sales, because they care more about press prestige or who wrote your reviews but I do think when you think about the work that we're doing as public facing scholarship and community participatory scholarship, these markers are, interesting to track, right? And I think 820 copies is a great number. Most published books by faculty usually range about 500 in a month. To have reached 800 to me doesn't tell me I'm badass. It tells me that what we're doing with community is working for community, right? Which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so ultimately, my kid, we're moving. Our book and documentary have been featured across major media outlets, including NPR, 9 News, Denver 7. We have our own segment on Univision or Univision that segment actually won a Colorado Emmy this year. And I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying it because I think so often we're scared of, if I engage in community participatory scholarship, I may not get the recognition that I think I deserve as a scholar. And to me, what we need to do is reframe what we actually think is the recognition that we need, right? When the community is saying, do more of this, and community participants, I had someone email me yesterday saying, when are you doing your next book? Can I participate? I don't know, I am finished number 2. But there's something about that that feels really neat, and okay, we're moving, right? 2 of our chefs have, Yelsper will speak more to this, but 2 of the chefs participated in book 1, have secured full-time employment in food industry. We've had over 15 chefs who have participated in short-term contracts and are now getting trained. We started this last week. Yelsper, ¿verdad que empezamos la semana pasada con la clase de Yelsper was part of it. We started last week. Our first cohort of chefs is training in food entrepreneurship. We have a partner organization, and Cocina was able to pay for that with book donations and event money. So again, I think Cocina demonstrates that community-centered and liberation-rooted storytelling, and it works, right? Because people are coming back for more. And I don't think that there's anything, yes, I'm an immigrant, yes, I knew these stories from before, but I also didn't show up in the US being an immigrant, right? I became an immigrant the moment I showed up, right? And so I think there's a lot of this, well, that's not me, because I'm not, because I didn't grow up. You can't, right? If we made it here, I don't see any reason why not. Immigrants are marginalized, right? So often there's the rhetoric surrounding them. The 2 ways that we hear about immigrants in the media, one is they're criminals, they're rapists, the other one is, can I help you? Right? We're victims so often, right? In need of rescue, right? Specifically in need of white saving, right? There's so much more to immigrants than that, right? The immigrants are moms, they're dads, they are chefs, they are engineers, right? They come with so much skill and so much wisdom, and that is not captured in the public rhetoric. It's, I think that's what Cocina's doing. That's a little different, right? Our solution to this broken narrative again was starting to capture the stories of chefs in ways that hadn't been done before. And I think we've created at this point a movement that is built on storytelling and food and community, right? We host private and community dinners. We host DEI workshops, cooking classes, and all the profit beyond expenses is used to provide immigrant chefs. Immigrant chefs, again, broadly defined, right? This doesn't mean French cuisine trained chefs. It's just individuals who want to cook and participate in the food industry with the culinary training that they need and with the support in obtaining the necessary licenses, right? I had a meeting with the state government, and I think the state government here in Colorado is doing and has made efforts to support our immigrants, right? They say, why are people not showing up? What is so hard about the licensing process? Our website is in Spanish. Sit. Where do I start? That's the work that we can do when we have enough money as an organization to then partner, for example, with Mi Casa so that they can train our chefs. We begin with story. We don't begin with the product. For me, the ultimate goal was never to get 800 books sold. For me, it was how do we tell these stories so that the world can hear what I'm hearing when I'm sitting with the chefs. And the chef's experience and the chef's need is what determines what gets told, how it gets told. Again, I'm not bringing my food to your studio. Okay, you're not, right? When it gets told, some people will tell you, I don't want to be in the book. We have one chef in book 1 said, I don't want my face shown, but I want my story heard. So you will see that there's, and you can check out the book, no pressure, but there's pictures of her hand in the book, right? You choose, this is your story, and I'm here to help you craft it so that we can communicate it, but I'm not the owner of those stories, right? That's why when I started, I said I'm an immigrant, but not the voice of immigrants. Our methodology is deeply participatory, chefs shape, again, what we tell, how we tell it, and we revise collaboratively, right? Even the translation process is done very carefully. For chefs who are bilingual, I show them both drafts. If we have chefs who are monolingual, I might explain, this is how we made some of these decisions, this is what it means. And we ask, right, what do you want people to understand from your story? What if someone left, touched the book and left? What would you like for those people to know about you? Our programs do more than just tell stories, right? They transform lives in that we combine food, storytelling, and community. And in that way, we create empathy and we offer real opportunities for financial empowerment and for gaining decision. I want to show you, we'll watch the documentary now, but I wanted to share a testimonial from one of our chefs.
Did you share sound too when you shared your screen?
I think, well, maybe. Try.
We're just gonna make sure that the folks on Zoom are able to hear the
Yeah,
sound.
no, I understand. It should work now. Okay.
Perfect.
Para mí es un placer, es una gratitud, no sé cómo explicarlo, que mi comida sea una historia acá en Denver. De verdad que sí, ha recorrido muchos lugares acá en Denver. Y pues cuando salgo a la calle algunas personas me dicen, wow, la chef Lila. Y yo sí, me conocen a través de Cocina Libre.
Lila was one of the chefs who participated in the first documentary. I'm wanting us to watch that documentary. I will ask that we treat the stories with respect. These are very intimate stories, they're very challenging stories to tell. And so when we think, and we'll have discussion and conversation later, right? But try to think of that from that lens. So stop sharing.
I'm gonna turn that volume up just a little bit.
Yeah. And you can see, no, you can see the trend.
Mi nombre es Iraima, tengo 44 años de edad, soy de la ciudad de San Felipe, Estado de Aragua, Venezuela. Hoy voy a preparar el famoso pasaporte con Venezuela. Llegué a Denver el mes de octubre del año 2023.
Mi nombre es Josber Alexis, tengo 25 años, soy de la ciudad Maracay, de Venezuela. Hoy voy a preparar quesillo y llegué a Denver el 3 de octubre del año 2023.
Mi nombre es Angélica Crespo, tengo 26 años de edad, soy de la ciudad de Cobra, Estado Falcón, Venezuela. Hoy voy a preparar arepas y llegué a Denver en septiembre del 2023.
Mi nombre es Alberto Diablo Montero, soy venezolano de Zulia, tengo 32 años y 28 de noviembre en Denver.
Mi nombre es Alberly Mayerlin Marte Álvarez, tengo 26 años, soy venezolana, Maracaibo, Estado Zulia, y llegamos aquí el 28 de noviembre.
¿Por qué elegí este plato? A mis hijas les gusta mucho. También lo elegí porque estando en Venezuela yo vendía patacón para sacar a mis hijas adelante.
Elegí el quesillo como postre ya que representa a mi país en la cultura tradicional y familiar de Venezuela y es algo muy icónico que hemos compartido durante mucho tiempo y que se conserva durante muchos años y nos representa como venezolanos.
Bueno, yo elegí hacer arepas porque es muy tradicional en Venezuela, en toda la familia. Y mi familia la comemos mucho en el desayuno, almuerzo, cena, a la hora que sea. Y es muy especial para nosotros.
Nosotros elegimos este plato porque nos recuerda a nuestra familia, porque todos los domingos es como una tradición venezolana, que para nosotros compartir con la familia venezolana, lo primero es el sancocho para compartir en familia.
Once a thriving nation rich in oil money, Venezuela has plummeted into political and economic calamity following decades of corruption. The exodus, about a quarter of the country's population. More than 7 million Venezuelans have left their homeland since 2015, moving to other countries in Latin America and most recently to the United States.
Yo vine a los Estados Unidos con mi mujer, ella se llama Angélica, y vine con mi hermano que se llama Abraham y su esposa que se llama Rosa.
Le dije a mis niñas, me vine con mis niñas, 2 sobrinas y el novio de mi hija. Le dije, hagan la maleta que nos vamos mañana.
La parte más dura fue dejar a mi familia, dejar mi país. Y muchos sueños que quise lograr en Venezuela.
En Venezuela dejé a 2 niños más, una tiene 8 años y tengo un niño de 6 años también. Es muy doloroso porque mi hijo, el más pequeño que tiene 2 años, él no conoce a sus 2 hermanos, porque él nació en Ecuador. Entonces mis 2 hijos que están en Venezuela me dicen, mamá, entre más me quiero conocer a mis hijos, a mis hermanos. Entonces no lo han conocido. Y es muy doloroso para mí.
¿A quién dejé atrás? Toda una vida. Mi mamá, mi papá, mis hermanos, son todo para mí. En realidad dejé todo. Todo. En Venezuela está mi vida.
Decidí salir de Venezuela por miedo a los daños que estaban haciendo con la política, con las persecuciones, porque estamos en contra del gobierno, ya que es una dictadura. Y a causa de eso, nosotros éramos perseguidos, mi familia, ya que yo fui beneficiado por muchas cosas de parte del gobierno, tanto estudios, tanto salud, como otros beneficios, pero yo no estaba a favor de esta política.
La casa me la quitaron o sea, quería que trabajara para ellos, no, yo no quise trabajar, estaban jugando vacunas, no quise, me dijeron que vendiera droga, tampoco quise, me dieron 48 horas para salir de la casa y yo no salí, yo pensaba que era mentira lo que me iban a hacer, esperaba que yo saliera, me quemaron la casa como a las 4:30 de la tarde. Ya mi esposa estaba de la mamá cuando pasó eso. Ella me llamó y bueno, ella se quedó 2 días allá de su mamá. Yo me fui, ella se fue más atrás mío. Yo fui para Colombia. De Colombia nos llevamos para Ecuador directo.
The economy is going into a spiral of dysfunctionality.
Venezuela has, of today, the highest inflation in the world.
Venezuelans today cannot eat. You see people eating from the garbage.
Hospitals that have massive deaths of newborns, and there is no access to medication.
A cycle of violence and street protest.
Desde que nosotros salimos de Venezuela, el camino ha sido muy difícil porque tienes que afrontarte a muchas adversidades del día a día, de las diferencias de la cultura de distintos países, de las palabras, de los climas, de la migración, ya que uno se va por tierra y tú no estás legal en ningún país. Tú entras pero no estás legal. Atravesar estos 8 países es la verdad que es una historia que nadie puede pues decir que es fácil, porque la verdad es muy difícil todos los problemas con los que tú te vas a encontrar. No sabes si te quedarás en un país o seguirás avanzando, o si vas a llegar a otro país, porque no tienes ni la mínima idea de qué va a suceder. Solamente es como, haz de cuenta que es una aventura que solamente la vida sabe hasta dónde llegarás.
Nos despertamos a las 4 o a las 5 de la madrugada a hacer una oración. Ya luego que hacemos las oraciones, nos vamos a la selva, entrando a la selva, pero entramos a la selva como 5.000 personas. Yo creo que un aproximado, o sea, mucha gente, mucha. A la selva de Acandí.
Lo más difícil, para mí, lo más difícil fue saliendo a la selva. Que para mí fue muy difícil porque yo no hallaba la hora de salir, porque mi hijo venía demasiado deshidratado. Y yo sentía eso, que no hallaba la hora de salir de ahí. Yo caminaba duro, corría para ver si llegaba, para que mi hijo pudiera comer algo, porque no tenía 1 día y medio sin comer en la selva. Entonces yo también venía deshidratada. Y es muy difícil eso, para mí fue muy difícil ver a mi hijo así como venía, que no tenía ni ánimo, no abría ni los ojos ni nada. Para mí fue un milagro de Dios.
The Darien Gap, 100 kilometers of rainforest separating Panama and Colombia. It's one of the key migration routes in the world today.
People in my country are starving, many are dying. It's been a dictatorship for 60 years. That's why I sold my house and left.
En el camino yo me molesté la pierna, la derecha, la rodilla. Había algo, una voz, antes de molestarme la rodilla, que me decía, agarra ese palo. No sé si ustedes se acuerdan de la película no recuerdo, de Jesucristo, donde alguien agarra, no recuerdo, donde alguien agarra como un palo y abre el río. Algo así era ese palo. Era muy grande, un poquito más grande que yo. Y algo en el oído me dijo como que recoge el palo, y yo con esa vocecita recogí mi palo, y resulta ser que era que me iba a tropezar más adelante, a molestar la rodilla más adelante. Y yo siento que fue Dios que me habló, que recogiera el palo, era para yo apoyarme en ese palo para poder seguir caminando, porque como yo tenía la rodilla de hinchada, no podía caminar. Pero sin embargo me considero una persona muy guerrera, muy valiente, porque las personas que iban delante de mí, que son mis hijas y son mis sobrinas y el novio de mi hija, me inspiraron a seguir. Lloraba callada detrás de ellos para que ellos no vieran que yo lloraba, y ellas lloraban delante de mí para yo no verla que ella lloraba, cómo me sentía yo con la rodilla. Pues me armé de valor, porque yo me siento y me considero una mujer demasiado valiente, guerrera, demasiado. Para la poca edad que tengo, 44 años, me siento muy valiente, de verdad, muy guerrera. Me apoyé en el palo y con el hombro del novio de mi hija. Él como podía me empujaba, me arrastraba, que de hecho en las nalgas se me hicieron muchas ronchas, muchas cositas. El pantalón, la licra que traía ya no me daba. Mis hijas me decían, mamá, anda desnuda, no importa, acá no vale nada, aquí lo único que vale es salir adelante. No me importaba si me veían o no me veían. Y bueno, pasé toda esa travesía solamente en la selva de Acandí. Eso fue solamente ahí.
Amigo periodista, también le llaman la mochila a ustedes. ¿Cuánto falta más arriba? ¿2 días, 3 días?
Llegamos a lo que llamamos la bandera. Cuando llamamos la bandera es porque hay mucha bandera de Venezuela y por eso lo bautizaron como que la bandera. Pensé que cuando llegamos a la bandera ya estábamos listos, ya de ahí para allá ya estábamos en Panamá. Resulta ser que no. Era donde venía el camino más difícil de nuestra travesía. Esto no se lo deseo a nadie. Cuando entras a la selva del Darién, no sabes si vas a vivir, no sabes si vas a morir. Solamente podemos confiar en Dios.
The world's most dangerous migrant route is busier than it's ever been.
This place is like hell on earth, really.
To make it on foot from South to North America, there is only one way.
The conditions are incredibly harsh. We just saw a woman that nearly broke her ankle in the river.
México sí es como lo más difícil. Lo digo por los transportistas, los de migración. Devuelven mucho a las personas, los deportan, les quitan cantidad de dinero muy grande, o sea, prácticamente los dejan sin nada. En México también, para poder llegar a frontera hay que montarse en el tren, en la bestia, y eso es muy duro. Hay muchas personas que viajan con niños y pues me tocó presenciar un día a un chico que intentó cruzar por medio del tren y el chico se resbaló y una de las ruedas del tren le dañó el pie. Y pues otras personas han visto cómo caen niños, mujeres y el tren los mata. Es muy difícil esa travesía. E incluso en el camino hay personas que te tiran comida, agua, te ayudan mucho. Hay muchas personas buenas en México.
Cuando nosotros estábamos en el tren nos quedamos en la parte superior del techo y duramos 4 días viajando en tren, diferentes trenes, y la verdad es desesperante porque tienes que lidiar con el sol insoportable, aparte que estás montado en una lámina de metal, tienes que lidiar con la lluvia y con un tren que va a 100 kilómetros por hora, el frío te atraviesa los huesos y sientes un dolor insoportable y lo que quieres nada más es llegar a tu lugar, y cuando es de noche quieres que se haga de día por el frío, no puedes dormir porque si te duermes y te resbala te caes y hasta ahí llegó la historia. Entonces son 4 días de mucho sufrimiento. A pesar de que ya vienes sufriendo, sigue sufriendo.
En el tren tú tienes solo los vagones, tienes las plataformas en donde tú vas ahí sentado o acostado en los fierros en donde tú puedas ir, pero de ahí no es que es cerrado, no es que nada. Si quieres ir en los vagones, dentro de los vagones, corres el riesgo de que te mueras asfixiado. Entonces hay mucha gente que prefiere irse arriba de los vagones, hay mucha gente que prefiere irse dentro de los vagones, y hay otra gente que prefiere ir como yo, que me escogí irme en una plataforma vacía así nomás, pero obviamente a los lados todo vacío. Entonces tú tienes que agarrarte de algo para que no te caigas, ¿no? De ahí, porque el tren va rápido, el tren hace esfuerzos increíbles y tú tienes que estar ahí pendiente de eso.
Bueno, yo crucé de Juárez al Paso, Texas. Ahí en la frontera del lado contrario en Juárez, del lado contrario del muro, están los guardias y otras personas que se encargaron de organizar a las personas en fila, las familias, las mujeres solteras, los hombres. Y ya poco a poco iban pasando la gente por la puerta. Recuerdo, creo que era la puerta 36, por donde entramos. Allí te embarcan en una combi. En la combi te llevan hasta un lugar de migración donde te hacen tu registro, te registran, te quitan todo. Ya luego de allí te llevan en un bus hasta otro lugar de migración. Ese día que a mí me llevaron en el bus, nos dejaron como alrededor de media hora, 40 minutos en el bus con el aire acondicionado a todo lo que da, aguantando frío. Y pues había muchas personas que estaban llorando ya porque el frío era insoportable. Ya en ese momento nos bajaron, nos revisaron otra vez la ropa, a ver si llevábamos algo. Ya después nos pasaron a un lugar donde teníamos que bañarnos. Nos pusieron ropa limpia, de las que ellos dan, y ya nos encerraron en una habitación. Son varios grupos, como 40 personas en cada habitación. Ahí hay colchonetas y unos baños, y ya uno duerme ahí. Y ya uno espera que lo llamen a uno para uno firmar, para las huellas, para la prueba de ADN. Y ya después te llaman para liberarte, soltarte. Por lo menos yo duré 3 días detenida. Habían personas que tenían mucho más tiempo que yo y yo salí primero que ellos. Es como un juego al azar.
Then they were brought to what they described as dog pounds, and that's the kind of caged facilities that we saw in those videos. But it was different than what we saw, which is that people were crowded into the cages and told that they weren't allowed to go to sleep. Parents and children were put into different cages and were yelled at for looking at each other, and it's not really explained why that is. And children described being kicked if they tried to go to sleep.
En el bus se montó un señor, un pasajero más, diría yo en ese entonces. Se sentó detrás de nosotros. Cuando el bus avanza un poco más, el señor se detiene a hablar sobre la palabra. Y en una de esas me toca, obvio soy la más vieja del grupo, me toca y me dice, ¿son su familia? Y yo le dije, sí. Me dijo, van bendecidos. En ese momento nos echamos a llorar. Y me dijo, va Dios con ustedes y van ángeles con ustedes. A ustedes nada le va a pasar ni nada le pasó. Nos echamos a llorar. El Señor empezó a orar y dijo, en este momento, en esta hora, este bus va bendecido. Uf.
The growing migrant crisis, the latest boiling point in America's immigration debate. Just this past December, encounters at the border reached a record high. One of the largest groups, Venezuelans, crossing over more times last year than any other on record, many seeking asylum.
Estados Unidos en este momento está pasando por una transición de elecciones presidenciales y hay muchas dificultades a las que debemos afrontarnos, ya que si gana el presidente Donald Trump, él dice que está en contra de todos los inmigrantes y que los va a sacar, que los va a deportar, o sea, no teníamos ningún tipo de beneficio o ninguna posibilidad de estabilizarnos en este país en el momento.
The first and most urgent action when we win will be the sealing of the border, stopping the invasion, drill, baby, drill, send Joe Biden's illegal aliens back home.
Quizás lo haga para ganar votos, ya que aquí existe mucha xenofobia y racismo y especulaciones con las personas de Sudamérica, ya que, por ejemplo, Donald Trump es migrante, es hijo de migrante alemán, pero a él no le gustan los migrantes, entonces como es ignorancia, para mí es ignorancia, ya que no creo que porque tengas un pasaporte que diga Europa seas mejor o peor persona que otra. Eso no te hace diferente. Pero creyendo primeramente en que las cosas puedan que mejoren, hay que esperar a ver qué sucede. Si nos dan una oportunidad o no nos la dan.
Working.
No.
Bueno, gracias.
We see them daily trying to work.
No gano mucho, pero sí me hago para la comida.
In tents and living on the street.
No tenía dónde más ir.
Trying to obtain work permits and make their way through Denver.
I need a job application.
They get on a bus in Texas or wherever, and then they get off the bus and they don't even know where they've arrived. And that's what we've seen from folks in Denver. Well, where are we?
Para mí compartir la comida que yo preparo significa un símbolo de amor y compartir un poco el conocimiento que tengo, porque a través de ella uno puede expresar la dedicación, uno puede expresar mucho de tu personalidad, si eres higiénico, si no, qué tipo de persona eres. Y también ha sido una forma de socializar con muchas personas, ya que a través de ella las personas tienen la curiosidad de saber qué hay detrás de esta comida, la historia que tiene.
Para mí cocinar me recuerda a mi abuela por parte de mi mamá. A los 8 años ella me enseñó a hacer mi primera arepa y pues ella ahora ya no está con nosotros, ella murió y pues cada vez que hago una arepa me recuerda mucho a ella y me recuerda las veces que compartía con mi familia en los desayunos, en la cena y pues es un sentimiento muy bonito compartirlo con ustedes también.
Muy orgullosa de compartir este plato típico venezolano porque eso nos hace recordar muchos tiempos que tuvimos allá en Venezuela con nuestra familia, recordar cómo hicimos esto, cómo estábamos cuando estábamos en familia, que estábamos todos en familia y compartíamos nuestro plato de sopa, de sancocho y eso nos da mucho orgullo. Compartirlo también con muchas personas que en verdad a veces no conocen el plato típico de los venezolanos, que eso es para compartir los domingos.
Para mí cocinar significa mucho, porque desde pequeña mi mamá me enseñó a cocinar y es algo que lo hago con mucha emoción, de verdad. Y compartir mi comida, hay un dicho que dice, vamos a compartir la comida porque donde comemos no comemos muchos.
Soy lo que dejaron, soy todas las obras de lo que se robaron. Un pueblo escondido en la cima, mi piel es de cuero, por eso aguanta cualquier clima. Soy una fábrica de humo, mano de obra campesina para tu consumo. Frente de frío en el medio del verano, el amor en los tiempos del cólera, mi hermano.
I see the whole slide deck. Still the slide deck, but I think it's okay. It's still this is still the view, but.
I don't even know, so.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing.
Stop. I forget that I have to be here.
I'm sorry.
I move too much when I speak, and so I forget.
And I Zoom tethers you.
Thoughts, questions. And filtered is good. Remember what we said about kitchen tea. It's incredibly powerful. It's hard to watch in terms of to see the level of inhumanity that exists in people's existence and resilience. I'm sitting with the attitude that people feel comfortable sharing their stories, and I'm hoping the stories are that people are not only moved but moved to action. And I'm looking forward to the conversation of being more about. I think about you every day and recentering Troy. But I do think that there's a piece to that, right? Of in the context of violence and erasure, and there's something about being able to tell your story that is transformative. And I said it before many of you walked in. I don't think this is a fully project by any means. I'm happy I'm working on it. I don't think it starts with me, and I don't think it ends with me, which is why I'm standing here today, right? Because I think all of us have a piece that we can contribute here. And I'm, like you said, very, very grateful for the chefs and their willingness, their openness, their passion to see this grow. They've done tons to see this project grow. That we've had chefs write the forewords of our books, chefs connecting with others. Who would write the review at the back? I have an idea. When we should do our next presentation. All of that very often comes from our chefs, and I don't think Cocina would have. Univision, right, doing that whole segment. We have now another segment that's starting in online news, and that's also done by immigrants, right? And so I do think it's not by Julia for immigrants. I think it's by immigrants for immigrants. But I also don't even think that it's by immigrants, because we've had so much support from people who said, I don't know anything about immigration, but I'm willing to listen and show up. How do you want to do it? Do you want the chefs one at a time here? Because I worry about space for them.
Yeah, otherwise I can either, if you want to sit up there, I can kind of like point toward the table, or if you want one at a time, people come up and tell their
I
stories.
think that sitting here would be, yeah.
I think that-
También si se sientan aquí. Okay. I don't think that's maybe the comprehensive physics, but I think it's.
Yeah, I think it was like close to the.
¿Están ready para la acción? ¿Están ready como esta?
Folks on Zoom, let me know if you can't see or hear the panel well, and I will do my best to try to adjust.
Primera pregunta que tenía yo, simultaneous for as we go, but era si igual forma de ustedes el que más decidieron, ¿cómo decidieron por ustedes traerlos?
Yes.
First, you want to do this?
Yeah, I'll do this. Yeah, my name's Jorge. I've been in the United States probably since I was a kid. I was probably like 2-3 years old when I came over to the United States. I went to school here, graduated high school, all that stuff, and I feel like I've always it's kind of like it's like a weird thing for me because I feel like growing up I never really felt like an immigrant. I just thought that, you know, this is where I live, this is my home. I think I didn't really start to have that realization until like I was older, and I was just like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that I'm an immigrant. You know, I didn't really realize that until a lot later in my life. And you know, after that I kind of started having like this weird you know, feeling of like limbo, like not really feeling that I belong back home or feeling like this is my home because of that. But yeah, I've been here, and then I just started cooking, and that's kind of been my life since then. Yeah.
George, you can say it. George is very humble. He's sous chef at a restaurant in that lot. Top restaurant.
Yeah, we got a best new restaurant in Denver this year, so that was pretty cool. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Josper Alexi,
Good morning. Alexis.
soy de Venezuela.
I'm from Venezuela.
Mi historia en Venezuela fue muy deprimente porque las oportunidades en mi país son muy escasas.
My story in Venezuela is very depressing. So opportunities in my country are very limited.
Yo estuve estudiando ingeniería de sistema en la Universidad Experimental de las Fuerzas Armadas. No logré graduarme.
I studied computer engineering at the university.
Universidad Nacional Experimental de las Fuerzas Armadas.
Universidad Nacional Experimental de las Fuerzas Armadas, and I couldn't graduate.
No pude completar mis estudios.
I could not complete my studies.
Ya que lamentablemente mi familia fue perseguida políticamente.
Because my family was politically persecuted by.
Porque estábamos en contra en ese momento del partido político, entonces tuvimos que huir del país.
Because at that moment we disagreed with the political party that was in power, so we had to run away from the country.
Fuimos a Colombia y ya
We went to Colombia.
empezamos a hacer una vida nueva.
We started a new life.
Y ya luego, viendo en vista que también fuimos atacados en Colombia de una manera social,
We were also socially attacked in Colombia.
decidimos venir a Estados Unidos en la presidencia de Joe Biden por las opciones que nos estaban dando.
And that's when we decided to come to the United States during Joe Biden's presidency because of the options that were given to us.
Ahora en la actualidad me encuentro trabajando en una panadería.
Right now I work at a bakery.
Y estoy muy orgulloso ya que he logrado conseguir muchas cosas aquí en Denver.
And I'm very proud because I've actually been able to get a lot of things here in Denver.
De hecho, escribí acorde a las preguntas que me hiciste.
I did think about.
Sí,
Oh.
menos.
I asked him if he wanted to share something. He was like, it's in my notes, but it's later.
La primera pregunta era ¿por qué participaste en Cocina Libre?
¿Por qué decidieron participar en it? So I'm asking why they decided to participate in Cocina Libre.
So I feel like as a DACA recipient, I, you know, when you first reached out to me about it, it just really resonated with me just because like all that talk about like food having stories and that's just something to me that is really, really special to me. I think food brings people together. I think food helps connect people. And I feel like if you have stories that you can share and moments that you can share together through food, to me, I feel like that's huge. I think like that's such a big deal. And yeah, that's honestly why, you know, and it just really resonated with me, and it's been really cool. Yeah.
George participated. So we have one book out that came out May 2024, and we have our second book this September. So George was featured in that second.
Participé en Cocina Libre porque quería compartir mi historia a través de la comida.
I participated in Cocina Libre because I wanted to share my story through food.
Cuando llegué a Estados Unidos, enfrenté muchas dificultades.
When I made it to the US, I faced many challenges.
No tenía trabajo, ni conocido, ni hablaba inglés.
I was unemployed, I didn't know anybody, and I didn't speak English.
La comida fue una forma de expresarme y conectarme con los demás.
Food was one way to express myself and connect with others.
En Cocina Libre encontré un espacio donde mi historia tenía valor.
At Cocina Libre, I found a space where my story mattered.
No solo cocinaba, también contaba de dónde vengo.
I'm ready to cry then. I wasn't only cooking, I also was able to tell where I came from.
A través del proyecto pude mostrar mis raíces, mis costumbres y mis sueños.
Through the project, I was able to express my roots, my customs, and my dreams.
Participar en Cocina Libre me dio la oportunidad de construir algo nuevo.
Participating in Cocina Libre allowed me to build something new.
Gracias a ellos, conocí personas que me ayudaron a entrar a una panadería
Through them, I met people who got me into a bakery.
y sentí que mi historia y mi comida podían tener un impacto positivo.
I felt like my food and my story could have a positive.
Cocina Libre fue un puente entre mi pasado y mi presente,
Cocina Libre was a bridge between my past and my present,
y también un primer paso hacia el futuro que quiero construir aquí.
and also a first step towards the future that I want to build. Because I hadn't heard this before, and so I'm like,
Sí, una pregunta era, ¿cómo ha moldeado este proyecto tu cuerpo?
so he says, he reminds me that I also asked him, I sent the questions. I hadn't heard the response. He says that the next question that I asked him was, how has participating in this project shaped your story?
I mean, I feel like I'm still kind of like really early on.
Church just started. So
Yeah. I mean, but it's honestly, I feel like I've always, I mean, I still feel this way. I still feel like struggle with like finding my place in the world. And I feel like as I grow and as I, learn, I feel like I'm slowly getting there. And I feel like meeting people like Julia or sharing stories, just with people in general, I feel like I'm maybe one day I'll find my place. Yeah, I think that's so really early on, but yeah, it's been awesome.
Este proyecto ha cambiado mi vida de muchas formas.
This project has changed my life in many ways.
Antes de Cocina Libre, solo veía mi historia como una lucha.
Before Cocina Libre, I only saw my story as a struggle.
Ahora también la veo como una inspiración.
Now I also see it as an inspiration.
Al compartir lo que viví, entendí que no estoy solo.
By sharing what I've been through, I recognize that I'm not alone.
Muchas personas migrantes han pasado por lo mismo.
Many immigrants have gone through the same thing.
Cocina Libre me ha ayudado a sentirme orgulloso de mi camino, de todo lo que he superado.
Cocina Libre has helped me feel proud of my journey and all that I've overcome.
También me ha ayudado a creer en mí, a confiar en que mi voz importa.
It's also helped me believe in me and believe that my voice matters.
Me dio herramientas para organizarme, mejorar y pensar en grande.
It's also given me tools to get organized and think big picture.
Gracias a Cocina Libre, trabajo en una panadería y desarrollo mi propio emprendimiento.
Thanks to Cocina Libre, now I work at the bakery and I also am starting my own business.
También estoy escribiendo un libro sobre mi vida usando mapas y símbolos.
I'm also writing a book about my story using maps and symbols.
Cocina Libre me dio más que una oportunidad, me dio propósito.
Cocina Libre gave me more than an opportunity, it gave me a sense of purpose.
Ahora sé que mi historia puede inspirar a otros y eso le da sentido a todo.
Now I know that my story can inspire others and that makes it unique. Yeah, I'm very moved. But I'll say, I think one of the things that we talked about with the chefs was not making this to me, Cocina Libre is not a Julia thing, right? I keep saying it, but I do believe it. I think that we share these stories, and when Mel reached out, we decided to share this here because I think that there's all of us as psychologists can be doing this work in the community. It doesn't have to be, I train students day in and day out, right? And I always say it doesn't have to be membership. I hope that they will support the immigration reform, right? Regardless of whether where you fall politically, I do think most of us would agree that the systems we have right now are not working. They're violent, they're oppressive, they're silencing, right? And even if immigration is not your cause, your fight, your whatever word you want to use, I do think all psychologists can operate from this perspective of liberating our marginalized communities, regardless of whether your fight is centered on LGBTQ plus rights, whether it's immigration, whether it is disability, right? That we find a way to, from a liberation psychology perspective and from a CDP, we talked about that earlier, start building communities that are showing up and participating actively in their own reclaiming of power, right? That it's not, that's why I keep saying it's not a Kuya thing. Yes, I'm an immigrant, and yes, I'm in the community day in and day out. But I do think that the power from Cocina comes in that I didn't know any of this would happen. When I wrote the book, I didn't have people that write a book, right? Being transparent. I did all the graphic design. I'd never done graphic design before. We did the editing. I found a volunteer in the community who connected with my 9-year-old, and they did that, right? I didn't know what I was doing. I still don't, right? I don't have a clue. But I think that what we are doing as a collective is, and that's why it's Cocina. If you look us up on Instagram, it's Cocina Libre Collective. Because for me, it's never going to be, I don't want it to be about Julia. Julia can get tired, Julia can get sick, Julia can outright die, right? I'm hoping that won't happen today, but I don't know, right? And for me, what matters is that there's a collective that will carry this forward, right? And that will continue to center the voices in ways that I've had elders in psych say, so you're not doing research anymore? You missed it. Okay, that's fine. Right? Liberation psychology has been around only for 60 years, or you were alive, but right. I'm hoping again that we can start rethinking of how we do psychology and be out in the community more, so that the community can have a voice in psychology, right? So it's not purely extractive. I am lost again. No, yes. Sí. So I asked them what they would like psychologists to know about immigrant communities. Jasper keeps me on track. When I say this would not survive if it were only up to me, this is.
De esta forma, quiero que los psicólogos comprendan que migrar no es solamente solo cambiar de país.
And psychologists will know that migrating is not just moving countries.
Es comenzar desde cero.
Starting from scratch.
Muchas veces con miedo y sin apoyo.
Many times scared and without support.
Las comunidades migrantes enfrentamos muchos desafíos.
Migrant communities face many challenges.
Pero también tenemos mucha fuerza y resiliencia.
But we also have a lot of strength and resilience.
No solo necesitamos ayuda, también tenemos mucho que ofrecer.
We not only need help, we also have a lot to help.
La salud mental es un tema importante para nosotros.
Mental health is an important topic.
Porque muchas veces cargamos traumas, pérdidas y duelo.
Because many times we carry trauma, loss, grief.
Y a veces no tenemos palabras ni espacios para hablar de eso.
And many times we don't have the words or the spaces to talk about these issues.
Por eso los psicólogos deben acercarse con empatía.
That's why psychologists have to approach this with empathy.
Escuchar sin curar, adaptar sus formas para que podamos sentirnos seguros.
Listen without judgment and adapt their ways so that we can feel safe.
Y reconocer nuestra cultura, nuestra historia y nuestras luchas.
And recognize our culture, our story, and our struggle.
No somos solo casos, somos personas completas.
We're not just pieces, we're whole people.
Y cuando nos sentimos vistos, podemos sanar y avanzar.
And when we feel seen, we can heal and move forward. Any questions for the panelists? Any thoughts? Ignacio Acevedo would say, any provocations? I love it. I just want to express you go. Just as Leah said, I'm very just really appreciate the the stories that's still reading and then and just interested in I really I am also the parts I being citizen learning in this past, she takes a yeah. And I just, I don't know, I'm just sitting here just like really grateful, just to wait, I think you all, and I think it's gonna be good right now, like the best meetings that I've been.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Gracias.
Thank you.
Now, I will echo those beautiful remarks and thank you for the powerful work that you are doing. I think it's so important. And I wanted to pick up on the last question. And that has, from your perspective, what works in terms of working for doing liberation research or community-based research? What parts of that work? And I also, not to be messy, but what parts are complicated and doesn't work that you think that we need to be aware of moving forward? Because many of us do community-based partnerships.
That's what it's, is it ethnologist and said yes.
Yes. Or other people who work with community, yeah.
I think honestly, for me, I think the biggest thing is just, you know, being present and just being aware of the things that are happening. You know, I feel like showing up for people, you know, you don't necessarily have to like figure everything out in that moment. I think sometimes people just really want to be heard and you know, may feel like, you know, like you matter or you're more than just being an immigrant. I think it's just, you know, being there for someone as a human being, I think. Yeah.
Pienso que en mi caso tengo muchas amistades americanas que me apoyan a mí y a mi esposa. Y muchos de ellos son muy realistas en el aspecto migratorio. Con nosotros, en la actualidad, con el mandatario, el presidente Donald Trump. Y hay veces que los temas se tornan como con mucho miedo de ellos hacia nosotros. Exacto.
Sometimes the conversation comes to fear. It's like putting vacation question. They scared for you.
Y nosotros estamos conscientes de que nosotros tenemos mucho más miedo que ellos, pero tenemos que hacerlo como a un lado, evadirlo. Evadirlo.
And because we're more scared than they are, but we sometimes have to put our fear aside so that we can pull that.
Y es bueno que ellos nos recuerden ese miedo, porque a veces es tanto la confianza que tenemos que evadimos como esa parte que no es buena en realidad, pero es realista a lo que sucede.
And sometimes it's important that they remind us of our fear and center our fear, so that, because sometimes we push it to the side and don't want to think about it, and so it matters when they recenter our own experience of fear.
Pero hay veces que siento que en vez de emplear el tiempo en buscar el miedo y los problemas, buscar como alternativas y posibles soluciones a ese miedo.
I also think it's important that sometimes instead of only thinking about the fear, we think about what are ways to move forward, what are options that we have here.
I want to also echo what everyone said. Thank you all for being so willing to draw awareness, to speak about truth. So that's I wanted to ask for so I remember.
Yeah, less work for me.
I wanted to ask, quería preguntar, as you're sitting in a room of psychologists and están en un espacio con psicólogos, how do you see from the bottom of from just an overall community approach, de una manera comunitaria. How do you see psychologists like us, como ven psicólogos como nosotros, that we can utilize our skill sets, our expertise, que podamos usar nuestras habilidades, nuestras pericias, that we can use our privilege and power, que podamos usar nuestro poder y privilegios to amplify what you're saying, para poder amplificar lo que estás. So, ¿qué nos pueden decir a nosotros? What can you tell us how we can be an ally together to amplify what you're saying?
I mean, honestly, I think right now in this moment is a pretty good start. I feel like this is I mean, just the fact that you guys are, you know, sitting in here and like being really open and listening and asking those types of questions. I feel like that's a really big start. I don't know if I can give you any like ideas of what that really looks like, but I feel like this is a really good start. I feel like having those conversations and being open to the stories and, you know, just I feel like for me, just being aware of what's going on and just try to give back when you can. You know, sometimes I feel like we get so caught up living our lives and being busy, but sometimes we forget to give back. So I feel like giving back is probably the biggest thing that you can do, I think. So.
Well, sitting, well, actually,
I mean, not very often, I feel like. So thank you. I appreciate that question. Thank you.
En mi caso, voy a contar una anécdota de lo que me pasaba en Venezuela al día a día antes de salir de mi país.
it may get to tell you a story, an anecdote of something that me in Venezuela or in Latin country.
Cada día que despertaba en mi habitación, me hacía una pregunta. Me preguntaba qué iba a ser el día siguiente con tantas limitantes.
Every day I woke up and remembered, I asked myself, what am I going to do the next day? So many.
Y siempre me encontraba con la misma pregunta.
And I always found myself with the same question.
Hasta que un día tomé la decisión con mi familia y escapamos de esa pregunta.
Until one day I made the decision to escape.
Porque no había una persona cercana que respondiera de una forma profesional a esta dificultad que afrontábamos día a día.
Because there wasn't anyone close to us who could respond in a professional way to this difficulty that we were facing day to day.
Entonces, yo pienso que escuchar las historias de los migrantes o inmigrantes es una forma de ustedes analizar con qué dificultad viene cada persona y en qué aspecto pueden mejorar la calidad de vida de esta persona.
So analyzing immigrant stories, understanding who you have in front of you, analyzing their personal history and thinking of ways that you can improve that individual's life.
Ya que muchas personas mentalmente son fuertes, hay otras personas que son más débiles.
Some people are really strong, some people are weak.
Entonces, muchos buscamos de escapar de esa realidad que nos persigue, pero buscamos de darle un entorno como positivo a nuestra situación.
Many of us are escaping our reality, but are also looking to put a positive spin.
Y sin embargo, es en donde entra el apoyo de un psicólogo. Obviamente no, muchos toman este tema como que sí están locos, de hecho. Que si venía a una conferencia de psicólogo porque tenía problemas mentales.
See, so I can't, when you hear it, so he said that as psychologists, that is work that we can do by centering the experience of those we have in front of us without assuming that they're crazy. And he says that's actually a real question that I got if I was coming to a psychologist conference because I was crazy. Oh.
Pero en realidad es bueno porque, por ejemplo, creo que todos los casos son psicólogos y es bueno que todos escuchen, ya que hay veces que nuestro entorno es entre migrantes y todos nos persiguen como casi los mismos problemas, las mismas dificultades y respondernos entre nosotros mismos puede ser como también confuso porque todos tenemos las mismas dificultades. En cambio,
And it's good to be in a room with psychologists because I think sometimes we're only surrounded by immigrants. And as immigrants, we sometimes have the same questions and the same fears. And we're answering each other's questions, but in a very rustic way. And so having a room of people who can support and intervene as well.
y en cambio, si hay personas, por ejemplo, en este caso, que ustedes me han sentado a nosotros aquí, pueden decir, mira, esta persona posiblemente tiene este problema, se puede apoyar de esta forma, o pueden hacer, hay alternativas. Ese es en el campo, creo que ya ustedes entran a ayudar a una persona que tiene nuestras dificultades.
And you're trained because of your field to look at people and say, oh, this person's having this specific issue or struggle, and we can help them in this specific. I told the that we're going to stop here because I'm going to give you the word that you start. Thank you so much for participating. Just a couple notes before we clap. One is if you want to look at the books, you don't have to buy the books, but they're in the back of the room. We also have flyers with info on the launch of our second book. We have an event, if you're Colorado based, we have an event at History Colorado coming up September 18th. The flyer with the QR is also there. We have free bookmarks that will take you to our page. Again, if you're Colorado based, a lot of our chefs do catering. And so you can access their information on our website. We have access to the second book coming up and just a lot of information on what we're doing. We also have our information on Instagram. So we post, that's why I was filming. With agreement from the chefs, we film a lot of our events so that we can start bringing awareness. Every share, every like, every follow helps us grow that amplify immigrant voices, right? Our Instagram is Cocina Libre. So that's COCINA, Cocina Libre, and then _collective. Thank you so much for being here. Gracias a los chefs por todo lo que han hecho por ellos.